I don't know he's pointing at me. I don't know how to start the show. And you don't want to start the show. She's not starting the show. Nobody wants to start this thing.
We'll just sit and talk.
Sit and talk.
Sit and talk.
It's like we're at lunch without the food, which is the problem with this today because I'm starving.
Sucks.
Right. It's like, what's the point? We could have done this in a restaurant, killed 2 birds with 1 stone.
True.
It's like coffee talk with that, but it's afternoon.
Yeah.
So no food.
I like it.
It's almost like happy hour time.
Is it fair to say I'm sitting with 2 real estate experts? Is that fair to say?
I would say that's fair.
Yeah?
Yes.
You focus on...
I focus on lending.
Yep.
And Kamelia is in real estate, the real estate side of things.
Got it.
Realtor part.
And you guys, do you work together on a lot of deals?
Oh, yeah.
You do. She's like your go-to lender?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah?
She's really good, and I can trust her. We know each other's styles, so
How-
smooth sailing.
How often are there people that, where it's really tough to get them approved? Is that a common thing?
We have those situations.
And what
we have things come up last minute, a week
Like what?
before. Like, for example, we had one client where there was something that came up that was foreclosed a week before we closing.
And you had no idea that was on their history?
I did not.
Oh, wow.
Lender Aaron called me.
And we did not.
That's like a big hurdle, right?
It can be.
That's like the equivalent of your lawyer at the murder trial finding out that the murder weapon was in the trunk of the car the whole time.
That is one of those moments where you read an email and you go, oh.
You're like, what?
Shit.
Right. And you're furious at the buyer at this
Yes,
point.
because-
You're like, you don't want to tell me? Foreclosure?
Sometimes as they don't tell you, sometimes they don't know. They don't know what they don't know, I guess. So in this
They
case,
know.
In this case, it was a previous divorce. It had been handled that way.
Okay.
But correct. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes they don't realize we need to know everything
Right.
ahead of time. So it could have gone really bad, but we got what we needed and closed it.
How?
So in this particular case, I don't think borrowers realize how much information we pull as a lender.
Right.
Like, we pull Fraud Guard. The credit reports that we pull are not Credit Karma. I mean, it is pulling every single piece of the puzzle of a borrower for the last 20 years.
Right.
And so when we pull Fraud Guard and we do those things, some of those addresses pull up that she wouldn't know, no one would know, and it wasn't even on their credit. So I had to go back to them and say, hey, we have a property that shows as foreclosure. Could this? And we did some due diligence for a couple of hours prior and figured it was probably a previous marriage. And then you kind of do this, like, pray to the gods that they did the divorce decree the right way.
Right.
And in this case, he did. So they had separated their assets and liabilities the right way. She took all encumbrances. But if they wouldn't have done the divorce decree the right way and assigned liabilities the proper way, it could have been bad and we may not have closed because the foreclosure was within 7 years and the program we were on, you can't have a foreclosure within 7 years.
Wow.
So there's things like that come up. And especially in this market, I feel like you have more of those type of borrowers in this market.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, a lot of the borrowers that are sitting in those 3% interest rates aren't moving because they need to or want to.
Right.
They're sitting.
Right.
So you see it more this time in this kind of market.
How long from the time you found out that little detail to the time you closed? How much time was it?
I think 24 hours. Maybe.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So
Yeah.
you fixed this quick.
I don't have patience. I don't mess around. I mean, you got to
Okay.
fix stuff quick.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you were nervous? Like,
I was nervous for a few minutes.
yeah.
And then we spoke with the buyer, and he's like, yeah, it was a divorce decree. I have all the paperwork. I can prove it. I was like, okay, thank God.
Wow.
Yeah. It's when they say, I don't have any of that paperwork.
Right.
I don't know where to find it. I burned it.
Right.
Then that's,
When Kamelia starts to panic.
yeah.
Wow.
It's when the sweats happen,
Right,
right? You
right.
reach for the liquor, maybe. I don't know.
Just medicate the whole problem. Yeah. And so how's business been like in this last few months?
It's been busy.
Yeah.
Like, every home has multiple offers. It's crazy. People don't want to sell. So there's not that many sellers. So you have one home and you got 5 buyers. Like, even though interest rates are high, people are like, we don't care. We need somewhere to live.
Really? I've seen a couple posts this week on Instagram It was Brandon from Vegas. Do you know him? He does his show here. No. So he posted something. I'm probably going to screw up exactly what he said, but he said something like between now and I want to say March of 24, he said anyone that buys a home now, between now and March 24, it's going to be the equivalent of everyone that bought during COVID. You're going to wish that you did. Do you guys, yeah, you agree?
True. Because if the interest rates goes down, the prices will go back up again, right? Right now is a time where at least not all buyers are in the market, because there's still some people that are like visiting family, right? It's holiday time. So it's still much better. And there's also those buyers that are going to be going to buy a home when the school closes, right? They're waiting for the school close so that they can start looking for a home in spring, summertime.
Right.
So now you're going to get all those extra buyers coming to the market, to a market that's already a seller's market. Now we're going to have more buyers. And then on top of that, soon the way we as real estate agents are getting paid, the commissions are getting changed. And sometimes now what they're anticipating is that the buyer is going to have to pay for the commission of the buyer's agent. So can you imagine that?
The buyer's going to have to pay commission for the buyer's
Agent.
agent.
Up to now, you had an agent that was advocating for you 24/7 throughout the whole time for free, right? No cost to the buyer.
Or the seller's agent.
The buyer's agent.
The seller normally, so this is interesting, and this has just come down. There's huge lawsuits across the country
Really?
that, and it's funny how it became customary because there's not really any laws or, anything in place, but it's been customary for years where a buyer doesn't have to pay for the agent. The seller has usually been responsible for both sides of the real estate transaction.
Okay.
Right? So you go in and make an offer, and the seller has typically been responsible for the buyer's side and the seller's side. That's why you see 5 and 6% coming out of sellers' commissions off the top or out of their proceeds. So there's been an entire lawsuit across the country with two well-known real estate companies, and I think that lawsuit's going to win. It's going to win.
They're pretty much up there.
So basically, what they're saying is there's no forced. It really shouldn't be that way. The precedence that has been set, really, there was no reason for it, and the seller shouldn't have to be responsible for both sides. So they're pushing back now, which means that a lot of the buyers that already have limited funds for down payment and closing costs are now potentially going to be looking at making offers on a property where the seller said, "Well, I'm not paying your agent."
Right.
So now the buyer's going to have to look at coming up with an extra, however, 1, 2, 3%, however that's
Right.
negotiated with the buyer up front. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens this year or this coming year with all of this.
And most countries in the world, that's how it works. The
Oh,
buyer
really?
pays for their own agent, the seller pays for their own agent.
Okay.
So until now, buyers had it like kind of nice, right?
Right.
Imagine going to court, you have a free lawyer,
Right.
right? And it's really 100% advocating for you. It's not one of those lawyers that the
Yep.
Like gives you-
Not court
right.
appointed. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's all about to change.
Wow. Yeah, I can see where that's going to be a problem, right?
It's going to be interesting. And from our perspective as a lender, we're watching all of this kind of go down, and we've even had some companies come to us and say, or not necessarily just us, but in general, lenders, well, what are you guys going to do? How are you going to pay the buyer's agent? And we're like, what are you why would we be responsible for that as a lender?
Well, I was going to ask you the same thing.
We
do
make
you
the
see
least
that
in the
happening?
transaction. There's no way to do it. I
To
don't
like
even
increase
know.
and like be part of the cost of
I don't
the
even know
house?
how you do that because
I was actually going to ask you that.
No, because there's not room in the transaction between real estate agents and lenders. The lenders are paid the least. And then we're also W-2'd. So we're no longer 1099 employee, or not employees, but we're employees now.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how that would work.
I wonder if there's an option to add it into the loan, right? If the house is 300,000, now it's 300 and whatever.
The only way to do that would be to absolutely change lending guidelines across the country, and that would be Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie Mae. I mean, you're not even talking from a lender standpoint anymore. You're talking about the government entities, HUD, VA, Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie. I mean, and that may, I don't know. I mean, I think they may have to go to the drawing board if this really takes off across the country. It's going to be interesting.
Wow.
It's probably the biggest shakeup in real estate.
Is everyone talking about this right now? Like,
I'm surprised.
does everyone
more
realize this?
Agents are
Agents are
among
but
themselves.
But it's interesting, some of them, and I don't know if you've run across this, some agents are shaking it off. I don't know if it's fear or ignorance or
Denial.
or our lobbyists have been so good all these years, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
What is your take with other agents?
I see all of that.
Yeah.
I see all of that happening. And I see agents that say, look, if I'm a listing agent, I'm still going to give money out because I need you guys to help me bring that buyer. Like, how am I going to find that one? I could be sitting on the market for months. I'd rather share my commission and sell it faster so I can move on to my next deal.
Right.
So I see all of that happening.
And I think right now it's up to brokerages, right? I'm hearing some brokerages already starting to talk about it, some aren't. I don't think there's a rule set either way that a seller can or can't, right?
Right. There's no rules. And just to recap, if someone wants to buy, they really should buy now. Just like what your friend Brandon said, it's only going to get a little bit harder, unfortunately.
Are a lot of buyers still coming in from California? Is that like a hot?
Absolutely. We're actually closing a deal on a buyer this Friday that's coming from California.
And are a lot of the California people cash buyers or?
Both.
But
it's a no-brainer. I mean, a lot of them are cash buyers, but some of them are working remotely, right? And it's a no-brainer. You have no state tax.
Right.
Everything else is cheaper. Even though real estate is getting expensive, it's still cheaper than LA. You know that.
It's crazy to me how many of my friends I cannot talk into moving to this state. You know, it's crazy. Like, I don't even know why. Never mind just moving here, moving anywhere.
From California?
But yeah, like these people that they're attached to California. It's the craziest thing.
I have a lot of friends that used to love California. They're still attached because their family members are there, their jobs are there, but they wish they could move. Like, they always talk about, hey, we want to move to Texas, Florida, or Nevada.
Anywhere.
But it's hard for them, especially for like Persian Jewish family, you know, it's hard to move. We don't like change.
And it's a tight-knit family circle, right? Like,
but they wish they could move. They always talk about, we're going to move. Eventually, we're going to move. I talked to my husband. We're going to move.
Yeah.
The roots are embedded.
Yeah.
How long have you lived here?
I have lived here since 1998.
Oh, wow. Okay. From?
Salt Lake, actually.
Oh, okay.
Salt Lake City, Utah.
And you love it here. Oh, there's a pause.
Yeah, I do. I if someone were to ask me where else I would live permanently, I don't know that there is anywhere. So I do. I love it.
Okay. That was convincing, sort of.
I know.
And you?
I love it here.
You do?
Yeah.
Can't imagine living anywhere else, right?
No.
Me
It's close
neither.
enough to my family. I can always, drive away.
Yeah.
I love it here.
How's the market for like the high rises, like on the strip and stuff? Are people still going in there? And
It's tough
it is.
because a lot of them, I mean, I will let Aaron talk about that, elaborate, but a lot of them, because of their HOAs and things, it's hard to get a loan.
Oh,
So
wait, why?
you have to be a cash buyer.
Tell me
Because
why.
If there's litigations, right?
Yeah.
She's gonna
So high rise, there's different projects. There's the high rise condos you see, but
Yep.
some of them are condos in and of themselves. Some of them are condotels. So that means you've got the MGM signature,
Right.
you've got
Palms Place.
Anytime you add a layer, it becomes more difficult. So if you have a high rise like Turnberry,
Yep.
that is a little bit easier as long as the tower is approved, the HOA is current on their dues. That's a little easier for financing than, say, like an MGM.
signature.
And why? That's because figuring out like who actually owns it, kind of thing, in a way. It's almost like a
Yeah.
third party is in the mix.
They treat it more like a rental unit. So condotel is, part hotel,
Right.
part ownership.
Yep.
And so that creates another risk for an investor to want to come in and lend on it. So you can do them. And the other part is with, I don't know whether they haven't taken off so well or there's just not a lot of investors. The HOA on those projects is a huge factor.
Okay.
So not only do you have to approve the borrower, you also have to approve the subject, the unit itself.
Yep.
Through condo, like our condo department. So we look at, is the HOA behind? Is the budget current? What do their reserve studies look like? And so all of that plays a factor on being able to qualify. We can do those in those units, but then you're looking at about 50% down payment from a borrower. So then there's that barrier to entry too.
Got it. And have those been appreciating the same rate as like housing, as houses, or?
Some, like I would say Sky, because of the litigation on it and because not everybody can get a loan, has not appreciated as I would love to.
Got it. All right. You have one there, right?
I have one there.
Okay.
And I love the unit.
Right.
But I'm not looking to sell, so it doesn't
Right.
even make a difference for me because it's a rental for me.
And that's the sweet spot for that, right? It's
Yeah.
like on the rental side,
Sure.
it's because the hotel does the work too, right?
On the condo
Well,
hotels,
not at
yes.
Sky, but
Yeah, on
like,
the condo hotels.
like
yeah.
at MGM Signature, like you don't even have to do anything, right?
Yeah, and that's I think why a lot of people do like those,
Right.
because if they come in, they can use the unit when it's available. But you're right, there's someone 24/7 watching them. There's cleaning. I mean, it's like a hotel; they keep it clean.
And it's Airbnb approved.
I was
so
just going to ask you, can
that's
you
amazing.
Airbnb like at Palm's
Yep.
Place,
You can,
which is probably better for someone that, right?
More money.
sure, absolutely.
Definitely.
And what's the deal with Airbnb, like just in general, when it comes to houses out here? You can't do it in a lot of those like neighborhoods. Like I don't think you can in my neighborhood, right?
If it has an HOA,
Right.
no, forget about
So
it.
anyone that has an HOA, you can't Airbnb.
Well, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember if it was the city or the county actually came out and said no to short-term rentals, Airbnb, and in the neighborhoods that are further away from the strip, because they're not considered a resort, it's harder to get those approved.
So even short-term rental, like, and so what classifies that? Like 3 months?
Less than 30 days.
Less than 30 days.
Or technically 30
Okay.
nights, I would say, and 31 days.
Okay.
But
But if you wanted to do 6 months to someone, you could do that.
You can.
You can
That's
absolutely do that.
considered long term. And there's stipulations, and I don't know exactly what they are, but it's you can't be within
1,000
1,000 feet from another short term rental if it's an approved area. And then trying to figure out which ones are approved is a nightmare because there's not a list. So it's not really it's not as easy as it used to be to buy and turn something into a short-term rental.
Got it. So it's not the best city for that.
No, but
Not like a
it's-
Park City, Utah.
Well,
or-
a lot of cities are hunkering down on that. I know in San Diego, we have a place down there, and we just went through a nightmare lottery for 2 years, fighting back and forth between the council that wants it and the neighbors that don't, and so it's happening all in a lot of places.
And no one's figured out like a cheat code? Is there a way to figure out no?
Every city is different. It's interesting. There's not a blanket policy everywhere. So every town, every city, they kind of can run their own policies and create what they want as long as they pass it.
And it can change. That's the other thing I tell my clients. Just remember, the rules can change.
That's true.
What is the toughest part of your business for you personally?
Toughest part of my
Yeah.
business for me. I'll have Aaron start first.
Tough one?
I don't know. It's a tough
The
one.
tough one.
I love my job.
Really?
Every part of it is fun. Like all my clients turning to be my best friends.
Really?
So I'm trying to find what is a tough part.
You just have no problems.
No, I have problems. It's
That's
like
because you're married to the problem solver.
there you go. That
Yeah.
might be it.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what it is? I always tell David, and he laughs. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
You get your offer approved. You're excited. Then there's a repair request. The client wants this, and then the other side doesn't want to do all of that.
Yeah.
Then it's like just I guess that's the toughest part because you go from really happy, then you have days that you're kind of like down for a few hours or a day or two, and then
Right.
So that might be the toughest part, I guess.
What about the roller coaster of like, so Brandon said, that post, you want to buy now between March or you'll be sorry, basically, right? You're going to kick yourself. But then there's also a lot of people saying, nope, there's a crash coming.
There's no crash.
No crash?
No crash. I'm no psychic, but I'll tell you there's no crash.
Tell me why.
Because government is involved, so they're not going to let a crash happen. Because most people that bought their homes in the last few years, they have mortgage rates of 2.5%, 3.5%, 4%. With their payments are much less than if they were to rent.
Right.
Because they bought it much lower. Because 33% of sales last couple of years were cash in Nevada and Vegas.
Wait, say that again?
That's what I heard a few years ago. They were saying during COVID, because people got all this money from
Right,
COVID,
right.
and they were buying houses, right?
Yeah.
So you're not gonna foreclose on a home that's bought free and clear. Doesn't
Right.
make sense. So there's no crash coming. That I can tell you.
You agree?
I do. And the demand, so if you look at over history over the last 20 years and look what happened back in 2007, 2008, there was an influx. There was more supply in homes than there was demand.
Yep.
We don't have that problem. We have more demand than we have supply.
Really?
Yes.
That's why we have multiple offers.
So the builders can't, the builders can't even keep pace enough for the demand. And then resale, there's not enough resale for the demand of home buyers. And that's just exponentially growing because, you either have your first time home buyer, you have your move up borrower, you've got the
California people
the California
moving,
people, the transition people, those kind of
population
things.
growing.
Yeah, I mean, we bought in 2021
Nice.
$799, and our neighbor just sold for like 1.2,
Yeah, I believe
and
that.
our house is nicer. It's crazy.
So you could move, but then where do you move?
Right, but then there's that,
That's
right? Because where you want to
why
move
we
to?
have a shortage, because
Right.
people don't want to move. Where are
Right.
they going to move, right?
Yeah, my dad did really well in life, and when I go on Zillow and I look at all the old houses I used to live in growing up, I tell everyone, do not sell a house.
Exactly.
I think it's crazy. Like, do not sell a house. It'll make you miserable at some point. Because when I look at like the house I grew up in was a monster mansion, like 10,000 square feet. It's crazy. I think my dad bought that house in 1977 for like $420,000 in cash, and then sold it in 82 for like 2.6 million.
Wow.
And now it just sold like a couple years ago for 19 million.
Oh
Wow.
my God. Can you imagine?
Can
if
you
kept it?
imagine had we just held on to that? Yeah. And like, that's the biggest, like, damn, but then there's other houses, like after my parents got divorced, like the houses my mom had and stuff. Like, I keep telling everyone, do not sell your house, right? Just figure it out, rent it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
But what do you do when you want to level up?
Rent it
But
out.
you need the money, do you just rent it out?
I would say rent it out. And
Yeah. And you can so there's lots of creative financing available in that situation.
Yeah.
You can do cross collateral loans, which means that you can utilize the equity in the existing property to purchase the new property, but you don't have to sell the one that you're in. So you can keep it and rent it. So there's ways to access equity if you need down payment.
and
To
that's
buy
a tax
new,
write-off too.
to buy a new property. You've got lines of credit. They're much more available again, that you can utilize for down payment. If it's not down payment that you need, it's just maybe how do we account for both mortgages, right? The current mortgage and the old mortgage. If you're going to rent that out, most of the time with a couple of documents, we can negate the actual mortgage payment so that it's a wash. So there's lots of creative financing options to try to be able to allow people to keep those homes if they want to.
Got it. I don't know if there is an answer to this, but is there what's a lowest credit score where someone should be like, where you would say to them, don't even bother calling me until you get your credit up? Like, what's that score?
It's funny. If it's a VA loan, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't need a credit score, correct? I had a lender that was a friend of mine many years ago. We had a client with a very low credit score. He's like, I don't even look at credit score because it's a VA loan.
Well, it depends. So every lender's a little different. You've got I don't remember, the subprime era,
Right.
where you could have lower credit scores, and
It was
you
like
had-
06, 07, right?
So we kind of have, I don't want to say we have the subprime era back, but we do have investors that will allow some funkier, lower FICOs, those kind of thing options. Typically, on a VA loan, you need a 580 FICO. But I would say to anybody, it's always good to know where you're at. you don't know where you're at until you know where you're at, right? So we'll, if we have a client that we run a credit report and their credit's 540, I've seen a 505 in the last few months.
Really?
Yes.
What did they have to put down?
They didn't get to put anything down at a 505. We go to let's work on credit. So I always encourage them, let's see where you're at, because someone can always qualify for a house. It just means they may be 6 months out, they may be a year out. And so once I look at a credit report, I can tell them right away, here's your problem, here's what you need to go fix, here's what you need to work on. And then if they do it, I mean, I've had clients before for a year, just getting their credit where it needs to be.
Really?
And then once that's done, then we start looking for houses. So there's never somebody that we say, oh, there's no way, ever. It's just, how long's the plan we have to put you on to get you where you want to be?
And how serious are you about buying your dream home?
Correct.
Right.
Right? Because if someone is serious and they really want to buy a home, they do all of that. They'll get there.
Right. Wow. What neighborhoods are like the hottest? Like what location-wise here is hot? Or what do you think, if you were going to give advice to someone that wants to take advantage of between now and March, let's say, like you should go to this area in Vegas or Summerlin or North, or like where would you say go?
That's a tough one because it really depends on where you work, where your kids' schools are, right? Some people want to be close to a certain church or a synagogue. So that really kind of a preference of that person. But we go drive around so they can see how it's like at night, during the day, the traffic, like lights outside. Yeah. So I tell them check on the walkability app to see how comfortable you are in that area at night. How would you answer that?
I would agree. I think it's preference of the home buyer.
Yep.
I think it also is, what they qualify for.
Money talks.
Money.
So you have the higher money, then I'll show you, tell me how much you have, and we'll go look at, okay, this is the area with this price that we can look at based on your preferences, right?
Correct.
And so like Durango Resort just opened, right? Is that a good thing to be around something like that? Or do people go, oh, a casino means more crime in the area or stuff like that, or no?
My clients like it.
They like it.
I actually had people call me before they really kind of started the groundwork saying, look, we heard there's going to be a casino here. We want to buy here because there's going to be jobs here. So the price is going to go up. So that's where their thinking's at.
Got it.
Okay. And it's a upper scale casino.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's driving, more business.
Have you been in there yet?
I have not. In fact, I was driving here today.
It's incredible. Listen to me.
I should go.
Go straight from here to Durango. I'm not kidding.
Just leave work behind.
Don't care. Skip it.
I got to go get lunch somewhere. So
Call in sick. Tell them you got COVID. Whatever you got to do to get out of the office. Go to Durango. It's
I heard
unbelievable.
It was fabulous.
It's so nice.
that's what my cousin said too.
Yeah. It's oh yeah. He sent me a message. He's like, I'm there all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, it's
This
good.
is a new favorite spot, I think.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's just high class. It's like a modern Red Rock, and there's nothing wrong with Red Rock, but it's older, but it doesn't feel like you're old. It's like old when you're in Red Rock, but when you're in Durango, you're like, oh wow, like okay, like they took it up a notch,
That explains it well.
Yeah, because like Red Rock for me, like if I had to pick my favorite spot in town, it's Encore, probably like on the Strip. But my number 2 is absolutely pre-Durango was Red Rock, and now Durango is my absolute number 1.
What
it's
about
like
Fontainebleau?
I haven't been in there yet. I haven't been in yet. I heard it's amazing.
From the opposite side, we're in Sky, and we're like, oh, this is nice.
Now that's probably good for you, right?
Inside. Oh yeah, it's perfect because my unit overlooks their pool, so I love it.
Oh, okay.
Of course, it's rented out, so I can't see it yet.
Right.
I haven't been able to see it. I haven't been able to go inside, but
No.
I'm excited to see what it looks like.
I'm glad you brought up that Fontainebleau. Circus right across the street. Like, what makes Phil Ruffin buy that place? And if it wasn't to knock it, like, wouldn't you think you buy it to knock it down? Because then you've created, the hot corner in town between.
But I heard that's what's making them so profitable.
I've heard
because they're
that.
not spending the money on.
I know,
fixing
but
it, they're making so much money.
And if you
always
owned
busy.
Fontainebleau or Resorts World or even Encore, like, wouldn't your mission be we need to eliminate Circus from the strip once and for all,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Maybe it's the plan. Maybe it's his
has to be.
long-term plan.
Like, if I was behind Fontainebleau, I know that's had 15 or 20 years of disarray or whatever, but like, there's no chance I'm ever buying that unless my plan is I'm also buying Circus and we're starting over.
The giant eyesore.
But also, as a mother, I would say it's nice to have one place that the kids can go to on the strip because
No.
everything else is for adults.
No, listen to me. Do not bring your kids to Circus.
I think
It
it's
is
changed.
dangerous. When's the last time you were there? Years.
It's probably
Yeah, listen to me. Circus is pimps, prostitutes, and drug dealers. Stay the fuck out of Circus.
It does smell like weed every
It's
time it does.
bad.
It's like, yeah.
It is bad.
Yeah, I used to take the kids to the circle. What is it? That dome?
The dome,
Right.
yeah.
But that had to have been 15
Right.
plus years ago.
When I was 10, Circus was the jump off.
Yeah.
Now, not so much.
Don't go.
No, you don't want to go. Send people you hate to Circus and they might not come back. You never know.
That's good to know.
Yeah, don't bring the kids there. Bring the kids to the aquarium at Mandalay Bay. That's where you can bring the kids.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That is a good.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of investment properties here in town?
No, actually, we have one in Arizona and one in San Diego.
Why not? How come here? Because the Airbnb thing is weird?
No, well, no reason. We just haven't. I mean, we've got our home here, obviously, that we've got invested. Here's part of it. Actually, I do know. We keep talking about doing an investment property. My husband's in construction. We've got a lot of friends. The way we would do it is I would want to do like a fix
Yep.
and either flip or fix and hold. There's just the market. There's just not a lot of that available.
It's
right
that
now.
hard.
It can be, and depending on the capital you've got and the
Right.
time and those kind of things, because fixing those up takes time. So it's not that I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I just haven't found the right opportunity yet.
How about you guys have a
You'd
few?
be amazed how many people tell me if you
have
have
a
a
lot.
fix and flip, let me know. Like
Yep.
a lot of like GMs or a lot
Really?
of even handyman's like, hey, I'll do it myself. Let me know. But I'm like, I wish I had that many homes that I could.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of clients for it.
Yeah. There's obviously a lot of neighborhoods with HOA. But when I've driven around, there are some, I didn't realize how many monster size houses there are with no HOA, like maybe over by like the South Point.
Lone Mountain area.
Right. Where you get a lot of land. I've seen like a lot of horses over there and like all kinds of stuff. Do you sell any of those houses or?
Actually, I would say in the last couple of years, I had a lot of my clients that love, Summerlin, wanted to get out of Summerlin because they wanted more land.
Right.
So they were calling me, hey, help us sell this home. And then we want to buy with you somewhere with a big land. We're just tired of because as the prices are getting more expensive, homes in Summerlin are getting smaller and smaller. There's no some of them don't have backyards now.
Yeah.
So we do have a lot of interest in that area.
Now, I know Dave has a strategy where he's bought houses where the owner finances. Do you do any of those deals?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Ever? Yeah. And is that a way to get around recently, like if people can't get approved because of the interest rate, like if sometimes the owner's in a spot where he can just, I'll bankroll it and cut the rate. Is that what happens?
Sure.
Yeah.
I've helped people that were, previous prisoners. They changed their lives and they wanted to buy a home, but they didn't have quite the credit yet
Right.
to do owner will carry. I helped my brother buy a owner will carry
Really?
in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Is there a shocking
friend.
number of homeowners that will do that, where they will carry it?
It's a decent amount.
Yeah.
Right. The only thing is most real estate agents don't even know about it, or some of them have never heard about it.
Right.
So for me to be able to give that knowledge to my clients, I think they love it.
Yeah.
And there are not that many clients because there's no education about it.
And are there ever like homes that have the traditional listing that you guys will suggest to the homeowner, hey, would you ever consider this? Like, do you ever bring that up or?
That would be more what Kamelia, as far as the real estate agent, would do in the
Okay.
negotiations.
Right.
And then what we would do on something like that is if the goal is for the current seller, the current homeowner, to be able to get out of that property in 6 months, a year, or 2 years, depending on the owner will carry, we will look at where that borrower is, kind of a snapshot in time and say, okay, we've got a year to get you where you need to be to qualify to pay this seller off.
Right.
So it's kind of a collaboration on both ends up front.
And in that year, I would imagine you're also showing the bank, look, he can afford this payment.
Right.
He's been doing this for a year, right? And that's
Right.
got to count for something.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's how we bought our original home too that we live in right now. We
Right.
bought our own wood carry, and when COVID hit and the interest rates were like extremely low, we refinanced,
Right.
which was really nice. Which is kind of goes back to what Aaron was talking about.
Okay, you just reminded me of another thing I've seen on. So I see a lot of these real estate stuff on
There's a lot.
social media. So as far as that goes, the refinancing thing, I saw someone, I don't remember who it was, they posted and they said, don't always bank on, oh, I'll get in at this rate, the rate's high, but I'll refinance when it comes down. And he said something like, you have to make sure that the home is going to appraise high enough because you may not be able to refinance because the home doesn't appraise. Is that something to worry about? Or
It has
no?
to appraise, but with the inflation rate, the home prices have been going up, you know? So it's not like, unless you were expecting a crash to happen and it was going drastically low, then you couldn't appraise. Because once you buy it, you're putting equity in it too.
Right.
Right? You're making payments. You're making that down payment and monthly payments. So I don't agree with that as much. What do you think, Aaron?
Well, I agree with that. And also I would say, and this is what I've been saying to a lot of my clients in the last year with where rates jumped quickly, is let's not look so much at the interest rate. Let's look at the payment you can afford. Are you comfortable with whatever payment we're looking at right now? Say it's $2,500, right? They say, yes, I'm comfortable with that payment.
Yep.
Well, if that client goes into a 30-year fixed, that rate's not changing. The mortgage balance isn't increasing. So what I explained to him is, you're paying $2,500 right now. This is the most, aside from property taxes increasing, but that's nominal. This is really the most you're going to pay. If you're comfortable with this, if rates go down 6 months, a year from now, whatever it is, you're in. You're now gaining the benefit of homeownership, of equity, and you're comfortable with this payment. So it can only get better over time, right? So, yeah, and almost every program out there requires some sort of down payment. And even if appreciation is growing at 3 or 4%, at some point you're going to be able to refinance. Just every borrower, every scenario is different, right? Depends on the payment savings. It depends on, but the appraisal thing, I would say would be the least of the concern from a lending standpoint. Unless the market crashes, and then we're in a whole lot more trouble than just being able to refinance your house. Right. So,
And the market crashing isn't really as big of a deal, I don't think, as people always make it out to be, unless you're literally looking to sell immediately. Like if you're in it for the long game, it's really
Exactly.
not
It
that
doesn't
big of
make
a
a
deal.
difference.
It shouldn't
Absolutely.
prevent you from buying.
No, because in the long term, in the long run, the houses always go up.
Right.
Look back 50 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's always gone up like this.
Right.
Exponential.
well, and it's like the market, right? You know, people, if you're in the stock market, you know there's ebb and flows.
Sure.
If you're in it short term, then you may get burned. If you plan on saying, okay, I've got my investments in the stock market, but it's more of a long-term gain, then you look at the 30-year history on that, you know, you're going to end up more than you are down.
Right.
So you can relate it to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was fun. Tell everyone where they can find you.
775 Kamelia.
I like it. And you?
You can find me at, I wish I was.
Why don't you have a snappy phone number? You don't have a snappy phone number?
I need that.
David Kohlmeyer owns no less than 473 numbers. Maybe he's got, 777 Aaron.
David, find me a number. So I'm 235-4613.
I like it. Phones will be ringing.
Yes.
Well, this is fun. You guys should do this, I think, every week if I were you.
I love it.
This
Yeah, we
is
should.
fun.
I'm available, but I'm expensive. So,
Okay. Good. I just buy you
right.
lunch.
Yeah, sure. That's all I want is lunch. I don't know if
From
you know
Durango.
how to end this, but you could now if you wanted to. See you next